You'll never know who you'll pick up driving for quick rides. Part 2 of 3. I haven't posted here in a while, but I need to update you all. I got into a car accident last week, trying to make it to Westside Park. I'm okay, and it actually wasn't even my fault. Lydia disappeared after I couldn't restart the car. Unfortunately, I'm carless for the time being. I've been trying some of the ideas some of you have sent me on this post. So far, this flooding the car with sage smoke or interacting with them at the gazebo isn't doing much. I am taking your advice at this point, though, to stay away from the shooter and the bullets, in case there's something more real about them. This is especially concerning for me because several of you have replied to this thread indicating the previous QwikRidez driver was indeed shot and killed under unresolved circumstances. I can say for certain that this phenomena cannot be captured on my smartphone, video, or my smartphone camera. I got a hold of a traditional film-based camera, but I haven't had those photos developed yet. I have yet to convince anyone to ride along with me to witness this event. I haven't turned up anyone in the park at the hour who has seen this phenomena either. And I haven't even told my girl about this. I could not afford the fee for the rental car, even with my insurance, so I was unfortunately, at the moment, at the mercy of this curse. At first, I actually felt entirely relieved. I had some hope that somehow Lydia would just move on. I even went as far as deleting the app. But the app has come back on my phone multiple times. All of my information, even my secure bank account information, has reappeared in less than 12 hours. At the same time, the app activates around 10. The fare appears, and it's automatically accepted. At first I thought I could just turn off the app, but after 2 nights it has stayed on. I turned off my phone, now it turns on all by itself, and the whole thing repeats itself. I also noticed that the location for her pickups is getting closer each day. By the 3rd day, the first day I got my car back from the shop, I thought about going back and taking care of it, but I promised my girl I wouldn't go out anymore. At this point, other than the phone malfunctions, there really hasn't been any major problems. I wondered at that point if she would move on, and maybe all the publicized fates of her previous drivers were coincidental. Perhaps she's had dozens of drivers, but all I was finding were the famously dead ones. And so it was the 5th night of not driving her. I was starting to think my strategy was working because it was past 10, and despite the app still returning to my phone, it was no longer pinging me to pick her up at a location. 10 rolled past to 11 and nothing. I was relieved. I started to feel free. I went outside to take out the trash, and I remember feeling this enormous sense of freedom lifting off of my shoulders. I was smiling at the sky, and I hoped that Lydia found her next driver. In that moment, I was still unnerved and perplexed by the fact that ghosts apparently existed, and that it was easy to stumble into and out of a ghost story. I was also troubled that I had lost a second income that I was definitely reliant upon. Nevertheless, it was over. I took a victory lap, gazing at the stars before I set back for the house. Then I caught something out of the corner of my eye. As a car rode down the street, I noticed something dark in the back seat of my truck. I froze in my tracks and eyed my truck. I tapped my pocket for my keys because I had half a mind to open the truck and prove to myself that what I thought I saw must have been some sort of trick of light from the passing car. All I could see was the glare of the streetlight off the slightly tinted rear driver's side windows. I brushed it off and started to head back to the house. but just over the sound of the groan of the highway in the distance, I could hear another groan. No ashtrays. My hair stood up on end. I swallowed hard and turned my body around slowly back towards the truck. The nearest streetlight flickered off for a few seconds, and in those few seconds, I could see through the windshield something in the back seat. It was obscured by the passenger seat headrest, but it was there. A lump, a dark spot silhouetted by the neighbor's porch lights streaming through the back hatch window. I pulled the key fob from my pocket and hit the unlock button. The flash of the headlights from the feature temporarily blinded me. When my eyes adjusted and cleared away the blotches, I saw the shadow of the lump, whatever it was gone. I slipped around the side and braced myself as I yanked open the door, my cell phone in hand as a flashlight. No one and nothing was there except my back seat. I shut the door, locked the truck, and went back to the house. Nothing else happened that night, and I woke up the next morning feeling invigorated by the absence of the app on my phone. I told myself that I must have just been really paranoid the other night. I went to my 9 to 5, I made dinner with my girl, I looked at the want ads for a new side gig, and I went to bed early. I think all of the driving and being on edge was definitely catching up to me. I wanted sleep. I wanted to sleep all of this off and just pretend like my brief QwikRidez career was just a figment of my imagination. So I fell asleep at like 8 o'clock. The last thing I did was check to make sure there was no QwikRidez app on my phone. And I was out in a deep, deep sleep. It was completely dark out when I was suddenly jarred awake. I had drool streaming down the side of my face and pillow. I only did that when I was completely exhausted or completely relaxed. I think I was both in that moment. Each time I blinked, it felt like I went back to sleep and then warped back to the present. I was confused as to what woke me up, though. I turned slightly and felt around to see if my girl was sleeping next to me. I couldn't feel her, but maybe she was doing her nightly stretches at the end of the bed, or something like that. I finally summoned the courage to lift my head and looked down at the foot of the bed. It all looked like that fuzzy darkness of a recently turned off TV screen. As I blinked again, I could see the faint outline of someone sitting at the foot of my bed. I groggily mumbled, "Lay down, babe," as I went to set my head down on the pillow. In that moment before I could put myself to rest, a car drove past the house, and in the flash of the reflected headlights I could see who was sitting at the foot of my bed. In a gory black and deep red splattered vintage dress, I saw the remains of what had to be Lydia, sitting with her body facing off the bed, but with her revolver-smashed head and face turned back towards me. I'll never forget it. My eyes darted up and down the jagged, darkened remains of her deformed face and skull, her blonde strands reduced to black and red bloody tacky clumps covering parts of her head where the shattered skull had sunken in. In that moment, her bloodshot right eye fell out of its socket, and the remains of her jaw dropped to the bed, riding a gushing waterfall of blood and bullet-mashed brain matter. I literally peed myself as she started to turn to lay down next to me. Then the door to my bedroom opened, and quickly as Lydia's apparition appeared, she vanished, as my girl walked to the door to see me in a state of inconsolable, urine-soaked terror. I had no explanation as I desperately tried to gather my sanity and my words. That night, my girl decided it was better to go stay with her parents for the night. I begged her to stay. Honestly, it wasn't for her sake, it was for mine. I kept the lights on the entire rest of the night, and I didn't get another wink of sleep. I don't know what to do. I could barely form complete sentences. I have that image seared into my mind, and it's never any less shocking. She was right there, in my house, in my room, on my bed. It wasn't going away. Around 4 in the morning, I heard a car pull up in the driveway, and at first I hoped it was Rhonda coming back. Then I saw the cherries and berries flash on. I put on my clothes and went to the front door, where I found the captain standing with tired eyes leveled at me. He asked me if she came here, and I told him yes. That's what they do when you don't drive. They come looking for you. The gunman shows up at the gazebo and drives us nuts with calls all night. She always goes after the driver. The boyfriend comes looking for me. You need to start driving again. It's the only way to stop this. So the next night I went back to driving her to her rendezvous with death. I'm reaching out here again. Anyone with any more information or any insight or info into this curse, into this haunting, please contact me. It's been a few weeks since all this went down. I'm driving to pick her up almost an hour away now, and she's having me drive her 6 nights a week. I have a slow radiator fluid leak on my truck that I'm worried I can't afford to fix, because I'm having to drive so much for practically nothing now. Please help. To be concluded in Part 3.